So thanks for having me, and somebody has to be the clock watcher so that I don't talk too much. I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I grew up most of my life in Montgomery County and am fairly familiar with many of the municipalities, although not evenly. So I'm delighted to work with Mayor Newton on the Rockville Economic Development Board. And so I've gotten to know Rockville very well. And Council Member Ashton, we met at the launch of Rock East, which is something that we were very involved in. And I think you'll see us get involved in a lot of local efforts whenever we can. I know there's a question about what's happening in White Flint, lots of things going on around town. But I also say one thing is a little unfair. Of the 21 or so municipalities, 6 of them are related to Chevy Chase. And I live in Chevy Chase, but I don't live in one of those municipalities. So I think I got left out. I think
You can move. It's not too late.
I think somebody decided to take our zip code and go, okay, you're part, but are you really in Chevy Chase?
Oh my gosh.
So,
Bill, can I just say one thing? I just want to make sure folks know that Montgomery Municipal Cable is recording, just so that everyone knows. And I also just wanted to note, if you have questions throughout, you can put them in chat or raise your hand. We'll get to them towards the Q&A period. But if you don't want to forget your question, feel free to write it out and we'll get to it later. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to answer questions later on. Some I can answer very well. Some are beyond my area of expertise, but I know where the resources are. And thought I would just give you a flavoring of the types of things that we're involved in. 3 very different things. One is going to be looking back at something we did last year that affected all of us in terms of the pandemic. 2 is something that we just finished, looking forward. And then 3 is something, a report that's just about ready to be released. And I'm not going to go through it, but I will tease you with what the themes are. And then I'll turn it back over to you all. Last year was really challenging, as everybody knows, but I'm proud of the fact that Montgomery County and MCEDC were able to really reach out to businesses. We spent, in addition to our normal time and work, looking at attraction and retention programs, so much time giving money to needy businesses. And the impact of the pandemic in 2020, 2021, and now as we're even seeing going into 2022 is pretty significant, especially depending on the sector, retail, restaurants, the hospitality industry, and so forth. But there were over $87 million in grant programs that went out, 22 million of which were handled by MCEDC itself. And for those of you, I'm sure you're familiar with this, we are a public-private partnership, so we are independent of Montgomery County government, but we are dependent on them for our contract and resources. So quite often people think we are a division of the county government. We are not, but we work really hand in glove with them. And even though we have a separate board of directors, we have a very good relationship with the county executive's office and the county department heads and also the Montgomery County Council, or at least that's how I look at it. And it is a true partnership. But we're not out of the woods. And this is just a summary of the major programs that related to businesses. And it does go across a lot of different sectors, so that when you look at the programs, the largest one was the one that happened right after the pandemic hit in March or April of 2020. It's basically for any public sector businesses, the Fed program gave out $25 million. Then we thought we were reopening. And as we know, we open, we close. And for those of you who are involved in the theater world, it's an up and down situation. But we did have a reopening Montgomery plan, $14 million. The list goes on. We hit the arts sector. We had a local production fund to help businesses who could pivot from doing what they used to do or couldn't do during the pandemic to providing products and services that were related to what our needs were, whether they were supplying masks or anything that was going to sort of get us through 2020. We did 3 restaurant relief programs, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with your favorite local restaurants. I think in total, we hit about 1,800 restaurants across the county. Some of my favorites are in your jurisdictions. In Rockville, my very favorite is La Ferme in Chevy Chase. But these restaurants really did struggle, and they still are. So I don't know what's going to come down the pike in 2022 calendar year, but I would not be surprised if there continue to be relief programs. And the reason this is important is that this is putting money into the economy directly to the businesses that need help. These programs were a lot easier than applying for a PPP loan, or some of the other federal government programs, but we think it's made a real difference. And we hear back from businesses all the time. And in fact, it was sort of mentally challenging for us because one of the restaurants, we sent a letter and the guy called me, and this was his quote. He said, the night before he received our notification, he was just about ready to cry because he didn't know what he was going to do. And he did not know how he was going to keep his doors open. And this was his path forward. And I think from this particular business, while it may not seem like a lot, I think we gave him 3 grants totaling $15,000. But we saw front and center what is happening. And as you see in the jurisdictions around the county and around the state, it is still hand to mouth for so many. Yeah, was there a question? Okay. So that we would like to say that was the past, but we're not out of the woods yet, as you know, with the pandemic. So when we started looking at the future, how do we get back to business? Some of you have seen, and this is on our website, on our homepage, we started talking about what are all the plans to sort of get Montgomery County up, awake, moving forward. And we're famous for doing studies and evaluating and reevaluating and doing it again and again and again. So under MCEDC's direction, we put together an economic advisory panel comprised of 20 executives across the county to look at all the studies that have been done. And our staff evaluated everything that was recommended from trade associations to chambers of commerce, and created, I think, a pretty robust document called Connecting the Dots. And it literally, the link to it is right on the front of our website. And I'm just going to walk you through those recommendations. There are a lot of them, but it gives you an example of the types of things that MCEDC is involved with, either directly or to support a more robust economy in the county. And this obviously will positively impact each of you. I've sort of summarized why we did it, but we also wanted to make sure that there was a consolidated roadmap because there were too many plans out there and no one was pulling them together to say, okay, this is how they make sense. Here are the common themes. So that is what we embarked on doing. And at this time, this study was released in October of 2021. There was still this feeling that, and there still is, that we have a lot of potential going forward, but we're just not there. And in some cases, lots of feelings that we don't have the best reputation. It needs to be better. I will say our reputation is a lot better than people give us credit for, but there is still that perception that we're sluggish, that we're not keeping up with the Joneses in terms of other jurisdictions in the DMV. But at the same time, every jurisdiction is different. And so let's not beat ourselves up too much. So the question is, what can we do? And so the recommendations were divided into 4 areas. By the way, this is a 90-page report. So if you get a chance to download it, please do so, because it goes into a lot more detail in terms of what it is we're recommending and why. But we took our suggestions and divided them into 4 buckets: 1 around knowledge and ideas, 2 around human assets, 3 around financial assets, and then 4 around a business supportive ecosystem. How do we change the DNA of Montgomery County? So the highest priorities were sometimes very tactical things. What are our strengths? And everyone gets tired of hearing about life sciences, but guess what? It's one of the many things that puts us on the map. And especially for some of your jurisdictions, while the life sciences industry tends to be concentrated up and down the 270 corridor. It does reach out to Silver Spring, not quite to Tacoma Park, but definitely Rockville, Gaithersburg, Germantown, and so forth have a concentration of life sciences companies and research institutions. So one really important thing is to add to the lab infrastructure. We also believe, because we're at the center of NIH and other research facilities, to build a global pandemic prevention and biodefense center. And I think we're well on our way to that being a plan that will go into reality. Also, to establish an incubator for hospitality tech startups. There's a concentration of the world's hospitality industry right here in Montgomery County in terms of headquarters, real estate investment trusts, and so forth. And then for future think, to create a quantum ready workforce. Quantum is sort of the next big science that's coming our way, with lots of work being done at the University of Maryland. But we really want to create this cluster of opportunities for quantum computing, which allows for innovation and us to have new industries and new jobs 10, 15, 20 years from now. The purple line needs a much bigger and better economic development plan. As you know, it's been really tough with the project coming to a grinding halt, and I think they're just about ready in 2 months to restart construction. Unfortunately, the opening is delayed until 2026, as opposed to 2024, which was 2023, which was 2022. So we'll talk more about that, or I can answer your questions there. Continuing on, to create a public-private entrepreneurship innovation center, which allows businesses to really develop and sparkle, but to give them the tools they need to sort of thrive, so that you're not just out there on your own. We do have a Montgomery County Business Incubator Network, and we just completed a series of recommendations that we gave to the county executive and the county council to sort of improve those incubators and to make it an ecosystem as opposed to 3 real estate facilities. So that report hasn't been released yet, but at least we're done with it. And I think you're going to see a lot of activity there. We want to launch a $1 million marketing campaign to really tout what we're all about. And we actually have we put out an RFP to get this started. The responses are due back actually next week. So these are many things that are happening that are in the pipeline right now. We want to change and improve the sense of customer service. And so we'll be launching a customer service initiative very shortly. We want a Montgomery County Competitiveness Council. How are we doing relative to other jurisdictions? Are we beating ourselves up for the right or the wrong reasons? And what are the signs that there are things that we need to continue to work on? And the list goes on. There are key emerging areas that we want to maintain even a bigger leadership role in life sciences. We're sort of recognized as sort of the number 4 market in the country. We'd like to be number 3. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a concentration of hospitality tech here, which is sort of a new industry, but it's building on the fact that we have so many hospitality headquarters here. The list goes on. Quantum technology, we will do more with. And we see certain industries that have been around for a while, but we don't want to give up on cybersecurity. We do feel that we have a competitive advantage there. And there are other areas in terms of advanced technology that Montgomery County should focus on because of the workforce that we have here and the infrastructure. The talent pipeline is really important to everybody, but we want to expand it to support those industries. Right now, we have an imbalance between the demand for positions by private industry and the supply that's available. And we also believe that we have to start early, going back to K through 12, all the way through programs supported by our local institutions of higher learning. Small business support is incredibly important. We just actually expanded MCEDC's focus on that. We hired a new director of small and local business engagement, And we're finding that even though we go after, quote, the hot industries like life sciences, biotech, and so forth, that small business is the backbone of what makes Montgomery County succeed. But we don't believe we're putting enough focus on that as an opportunity in itself. We'll continue to work on targeted industry investment opportunities. And then there's always the opportunity for us to leverage our international reputation. We have probably the most diverse county in the country. You know, over 150 languages are spoken in the public school system here. 138 countries are represented in terms of the makeup of the population, and that continues to grow. I mentioned the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center that we would like to deal with. We want to eliminate the entrepreneurial talent gap. Everyone thinks that people go to DC and Virginia. There are a lot of people here, but we really want to make sure there's an environment for talent appreciation here. We have a very strong federal engagement strategy. How do you take all that IP and all the PhDs that are out there, and where there's the opportunity to translate that into new businesses and entrepreneurship? We want to do that, and we will. And again, I mentioned the Incubator network earlier. We talked about the marketing partnership, which will move forward in terms of supporting the $1 million campaign that we're going to launch. And we need to do more showcase summits to show the best of Montgomery County, whether it's at trade shows, whether it's here. We're not doing enough there. And then I mentioned the customer service experience, which we'd like to work on. So all of that is happening. Read that report. And again, lots of diverse ideas, but there is quite a bit of support for doing all of these things. And we're in the process of either launching these or trying to figure out how to fund them. In terms of economic development regulations, always a challenge. I think we made a ton of progress. And when you talk about what can municipalities do, I think it's important that we're streamlined in terms of not just Montgomery County regulations, but how things tie in with specific municipalities so that we are consistent and complementary. And then we talked about the competition and having a competitiveness council. And then we've got to make sure all this happens. So behind the scenes, MCEDC has got this big Excel spreadsheet that's keeping track of how all this is going to happen. I'm going to skip this slide. The bottom line is we just need to make things happen. And everyone wants us to be a top destination for conducting business and creating jobs in the county. Just as we finished that study, we had to jump into something that we've never done before. And that is what we call the comprehensive economic strategy, but it's really the economic development strategic plan for Montgomery County. Historically, that was done by the county itself. And some forward-thinking legislators, our friends, decided that they thought it was best for MCEDC to take on that responsibility, looking at a more comprehensive view, whether it relates to transportation, housing, economic development. And that legislation passed. So I worked through the holidays to deliver by 6 p.m. on December 31st, the draft comprehensive economic strategy, which covers the next 4 years. And because the county executive has not released it, nor has the county council, I would otherwise share it with you today. But there are 4 themes. And the idea is that we have to move forward together, not individually. You can't have planning doing one thing, the county executive doing another, MCEDC doing another, chambers of commerce doing something else. So there needs to be a unified approach to economic development. And we think we have done that in the sense that we took the Thrive Montgomery 2050 plan, we took the housing needs assessment, we took the transportation plan, we put them all together to make sure that there is consistency, and it will be around these 4 themes: accelerating innovation, economic drivers, and entrepreneurship. 2, to provide a greater workforce and educational opportunities with an a focused effort across the county in both the public and the private sector. And then to build livable communities focusing on transportation and housing. And I know housing is a hot button everywhere, but especially in Montgomery County. And then finally, to make sure that we really do have an inclusive economy with shared prosperity. Is there community wealth building? Are we focusing on disadvantaged communities? Because otherwise we'll be leaving people behind and we'll become a county of haves and have-nots. So this is what's coming. And as soon as that the county council allows us to release this, it will go public. The county executive will send his response back by the end of the month, the end of January. And then there'll be hearings and discussions with the county council beginning from February through April. So this is what's coming, just a cross section of some of the things that we have been working on, that we will be working on, but to give you a sense of the broad array of activities that we're involved with here. So with that said, I'm going to stop because I just did a lot of talking, and now I'm going to do a lot of listening and to hear more about what's on your mind and what either we can do collectively to be of more help, or what MCEDC can do to work with you individually.
Thank you, Bill Tompkins. I really appreciate that overview, not only looking at what you've done, but what is planned for the future. And also thank you for helping many of our businesses throughout the county survive and thrive through the pandemic. You shared a lot of really important nuggets of information. I know this is not officially approved yet, but would you be comfortable in sharing the slides with?
Yes, Holly has it.
Yeah.
In fact, I sent it to her earlier. It's a clunky presentation because we actually had 3 different ones, and I put them together to try to give you the overview. We have longer versions of each section, but Holly, you're more than welcome to distribute that. And then again, I really do encourage you to go to thinkmoco.com, get a copy of Connecting the Dots, look for the Moving Forward Together Comprehensive Economic Strategy, which will be broadly debated over the next several months. And there are other resources when that comes out. There were questions about the Thrive Montgomery 2050 plan, which is on the county, the Montgomery Planning's website. It's a well done document, in my opinion. But we can talk about that as I answer questions.
Thank you for confirming that we can share the slides. I'm going to open the floor. If you would like to share a question, if you can please raise your hand, or you can drop it in the chat.
Is that Tracy?
It is Tracy. I'm Tracy Furman, and I'm the mayor of the town of Kensington.
Ah.
And, are you familiar with the town?
Very. I live about 5 minutes from you.
Oh, cool.
I have ridden my bike up that hill to the Mormon temple, which is not exactly in the town, which I figured out.
Correct.
But I go to Johnson's Florist all the time, and yes.
Well, we're a very small town with a huge community around us, the Kensington community around us, and we have approximately 200 small businesses here in the town of Kensington. And we were very fortunate during the pandemic that during the that our community rose to the occasion and was doing a lot of takeout, and our retail, actually they survived, and we actually had new businesses open during the pandemic, which I'm in awe that people would do that, take that risk, and they're doing quite well. My question is, though, before the pandemic, what was the downfall for most of these small businesses? Was it high rent, or I know because we're getting a business, Pike and Rose, that's coming to us, and I think part of it was probably because they were paying a lot of rent at Pike and Rose.
Well, I would say in a nutshell, businesses who have been severely impacted are in industries that you might not want to be in. The restaurant business is one of the toughest businesses out there, yet it's one of the most entrepreneurial. Someone has a great idea, even if they have a business plan. If you look at the turnover in restaurants, it has always been high, the margins low, and we have a proliferation of restaurants in Montgomery County in particular, believe it or not. So that was one issue. In terms of service establishments, there's a domino effect. You know, everybody goes home, nobody goes to the cleaners to get their clothes clean. You don't go out to lunch. You don't run to the drugstore as often. And so that had a knock-on effect that for smaller businesses in particular, it's like my customers are gone. The sidewalks are empty. And so I would say that the pandemic just literally pulled the rug from under us, like something we hadn't seen in over 100 years.
Right.
But there were no systemic issues that were suggesting like, if we don't do something soon, something is going to happen. There would have been the natural issues. In terms of high rents, that's one of the most expensive between rent and personnel, expensive costs of doing business anywhere. The rents here in Montgomery are no higher on a per square foot basis than they are anywhere else. In fact, in many cases lower, but rent is a big deal. And if you don't have any money coming in and you got to write a check for $10,000 a month, that is a problem. So I don't think there was anything systemic that was leading to that.
Okay. Well, thank you. And we certainly, the grants during the pandemic helped a lot of our businesses to get through, and as well as the community. So we still have new businesses opening now, which is great.
Yeah, which is great. Okay, is it Shana or Shana?
Shana Davis Cook.
Shana?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Bill, for being here. I'm the manager of Chevy Chase Village, and we are the municipality at the southernmost point of the county on Connecticut Avenue. I had two questions for you. One, you had kind of, in passing, referenced the perceptions that abound about Montgomery County not being good for business. Can you talk a little bit more about what you think fuels those perceptions about the county not being business friendly? And then my second question is regarding the pandemic center. Has a final location been identified for the pandemic center? I'd heard that there was a temporary or interim location or a starter location that had been identified. But do you have any information about the final location for the full center?
Well, let me answer the first question first. I would rather not concentrate on that because we're trying to move forward. And I think perceptions develop over time. We're a big county, and we are a big, wealthy county with a lot of assets. And we have survived so well for so long by leveraging the assets that were here, both because we had a great school system, we have our income levels are one of the highest in the country. And yet I don't think we had that concerted effort to sort of focus like the state of Virginia did on, okay, we're going to take the governor, or the governor took the reins many, many years ago, 20 years ago, and said, we're going to make business a #1 priority for the state. And they changed legislation, they came up with money, and they pulled people together. And so part of that was real in terms of streamlining things, and part of it was the perception, because they were all of one voice, all the chambers and so forth and so on. We didn't do that here in the state of Maryland. While there was the Maryland is Open for Business campaign, at least in Montgomery County, we didn't have a concerted and coordinated effort in terms of business regulations, business guidance, and we are very splintered. So Montgomery Planning is its own entity. It's not part of Montgomery County government, and yet it really drives economic development in big ways. Even here, we don't control the economic development funds. They're controlled by the county executive's office, although we work very closely with them. The county council controls zoning. And so you start thinking about, when you're running a business, you got to run to a lot of places, and sometimes it's hard and cumbersome. But we're actually better than we're given credit for. And when we've done surveys and asked businesses, give us specific examples of how we are different. Sometimes it's attitude. It's not about cost, because the few studies that we've been able to see suggest that it is not necessarily more expensive to do business here than elsewhere. It's just that we may not be as coordinated or streamlined as some other jurisdictions.
Thank you, Kate Stewart, and if you would each show or share where you represent in the county, just so as Bill answers the question, he may have a more nuanced response.
I would like to go back for a second. So another example of a big challenge, and there aren't too many municipalities in this part of the county. But a big challenge, not just when it comes to planning, but economic development, is the East County and White Oak, Viva White Oak. How do you take that and make something out of it? All that land is privately owned. And so we're really driven by what the developers choose to do with that or not. And that's been a big challenge for us, because we would love to see more development, especially diversity of development in terms of business and other activities in the East County. But it's really not driven by zoning issues. It's driven by what is going to attract businesses in large numbers to move to that huge tract of land. And so we do what we can, but at the same time, that's not where it needs to be. And if we could think of something that would enhance economic development in the East County in a bigger way, then we would do that. Fortunately, Montgomery College is put money in their budget, and so has the county executive in the capital budget, to create an East County location for Montgomery College. So there are some things that are happening.
But it sounds like you come in quite late.
We do. That is correct. We take what is there, and then we take the plans that are being developed, and our job is primarily to go out and work with businesses on helping them to grow and expand, to attract new ones that are coming here. But MCEDC is really not involved in the planning process directly. It's not in our charter. That is why planning is there. And that's why I referenced the fact earlier that Montgomery County has it's a disparate set of resources all over the county, and they're not concentrated.
Which means it's sort of, the planning department says, if you build it, they will come, and then you're supposed to make them come?
No, the planning department puts a lot more effort in that. They do a lot of research and a lot of homework. I know some people don't necessarily always agree with them.
I'm one of them.
Okay. But me being new to economic development for 3 years, I lived here, I lived in our house for 30 some years, but I always worked in either DC or I commuted to California. And when this job opened, I looked up and I said, what the hell goes on in Montgomery County? I'm paying all these taxes and I know nothing about economic development. I just thought this is where my house was. So when I turned around and looked, I think I'm trying to be objective about what works and what doesn't. And again, while I don't always agree, I do think they try to look at, they're looking at lots of big picture things. And again, some we agree with, some we don't, but we do try to follow so that there's some consistency.
Thank you. Kate, nice to it.
Great. Thanks, Monique. Hi, Bill. Thank you for this tonight. Kate Stewart, the mayor in Tacoma Park. I want to go back. You said in the moving forward together, this is going to be on workforce. I wrote that down. Yes. And, one of the things that particularly now during the pandemic, we've seen a lot of shortages in a lot of our businesses have shortages in staffing. We've been talking about job creation in the county. Could you just talk to us a little bit more from your perspective and what you all have been working on? Sure. Where are the trends and where do we need to go on workforce development?
Sure. There are lots of them. And this is not in order of priority, but one of the things that is happening and needs to happen is that you have to have more connectivity, flexibility, and adaptability between MCPS and the institutions of higher learning, Montgomery College, USG, which is one of our biggest hidden assets, and really working on shorter term curriculum degrees, different ways of training people to match what businesses really need, where the jobs are. And when I first started working with both of those institutions where we're about to sign a MOU, my question was, well, my perception of universities is that the professors control it all. They're tenured and they run the place. But I think we're fortunate here that everybody sees the opportunity to better define programs that train the residents that are here for the types of jobs that are here. WorkSource Montgomery, who's our partner right here in this office, is completely revamped what they are doing in terms of adaptability and matching employer needs much more specifically with employee skill sets, and not just at the lower end of the pay scale, but for good, reasonably, I don't want to call it good paying jobs. That sounds horrible, but jobs that really allow you to survive and thrive here in Montgomery County. And so we actually are hiring a workforce specialist to take the programs that WorkSource Montgomery has and what the demands of very specific businesses are. So training and retraining and education is a big part of how we look at the workforce shortages. You got to be careful when you look at, when I say careful, look at where we have either unemployment or there are gaps. Some of those gaps are happening across the country. And especially when you look at the Great Resignation and people saying, I'm not doing even the $12 or $15 an hour jobs. I want to do something completely different. And so those shortages are going to be there for a while across all industries, and that's just not unique to Montgomery County. But I also believe that we will do a better job of bringing the private sector in earlier in the game in terms of identifying their needs, not just for today, but for next year and the year after. Apprenticeship programs are a big deal. That is the new hot button, not just here, but what companies really need to do, if you don't have enough engineers or software people, one of the fastest ways to train people who are smart enough but don't have the formal training, bring them in and teach them on site, and don't wait until you go through the 4-year process or the 2-year process, and stop worrying about the fact that 75% of the jobs require a college degree. That's sort of not going to work for a while because you will never have the source of workforce that you're going to need. So you better look at different ways to do that.
Thank you. Bridget Newton.
Sorry, trying to find my mute button. Hi, Bill. It's good to see you. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Thank you. And I just want to touch on a couple points that you and others have made. Most recently, Kate, you made one about workforce. And through READY, Rockville Economic Development, which is executive director is Cindy Rivard, deputy director is Rochelle Wilson. Mm-hmm. They have put together an amazing program, and Bill sits on the board of READY as well. And so anybody, all of you on here can reach out to READY and get some very good information about things. READY has a workforce committee, workforce development committee, which is chaired by Dr. Kim Kelly, who's the vice president provost at Montgomery College. And we've been working on these kind of things for several years now, which has really helped us get into the pandemic conversation to what Bill was just talking about with the training and whatnot. But Kate, to your point, being Montgomery College took a park in your city, you might be a great, or it might be good for you or your economic development person to get involved with this group in some way. READY is also the home of the Maryland Women's Business Center, MWBC. So we do a lot of, not we, Bridget, but we, READY, do a lot of training and helping with small business startups, entrepreneurial and things. And a lot of it actually up until the pandemic was centered around women-owned businesses, specifically caregiving, early education, that kind of stuff. To Shana's comment, which, you know, you all know I'm not from here, but I've lived here more than half my life. So I have learned a lot about Rockville and Montgomery County. And I think it is a perception, Bill, and you're right. We don't want to live on the perception because that then can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I think it is something we need to be aware of, that we tend to poach in Montgomery County rather than support. And one of the things that I've learned through MML is that each of our communities is distinct and unique in its own way. We all have something to offer, and in many, many cases, it's different. And I think one thing that MCEDC could do would be to help celebrate that uniqueness and talk to different businesses about, okay, if you're looking for this, you know, might focus on this area, or if you're, because it really helps us to have our own niche. And so that's just something that I've been thinking about for a while is, you know, obviously some of us have had the ability to choose where we wanted to live, and we can then sort of make the city what we want in some regards. And so I think we want to celebrate that and work on that. And, you know, you said the Chevy Chases are all together, but there's a connectivity there. There's a simpatico, and I think that works. And when we talk about Montgomery planning, one of the things that I worry about is trying to make all of Montgomery County the same. It's not. And we have a lot of diversity. Yes, we're very wealthy in some respects, but we also have a lot that's not wealthy. And we need to acknowledge that and allow everybody, you know, to rise in that regard. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on those things. And by the way, if you had anything to do with Tetracore coming to Rockville, I say thank you very much. That was a great announcement today. So thank you.
Yeah, I will tell you that we do try to be neutral and try not to play favorites, because we get calls all the time, including from Rockville. How come you didn't pitch this site to us? And as Mayor Newton knows, actually it was a little bit touchy. We saved this for the county, but you know, with Choice Hotels as an example, they will be moving out of downtown Rockville. They're staying in Rockville, but it won't be Rockville within the city limits.
They're not in Rockville. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. They're not in Rockville. They're in Pike and Rose.
They will be, yes. But those are some of the tug of wars we have. It's the first thing when we look at how do we save Choice Hotels.
Yeah.
And of course, we work very closely with Reddy and the city of Rockville to try to keep them right where they are. But it's a delicate balance for us in that you say, well, what about this jurisdiction? We get tremendous pressure to do more to help. It's not a municipality, but Silver Spring, downtown Silver Spring. Really important and very different in terms of a business center. It is not Bethesda, but it's just as important as Bethesda because it has all the infrastructure and the urban settings that are attracting younger people. So if we don't do something there collectively, then we're hurting the entire county. Then we get a call from, we get lots of calls from Germantown, which has actually been pretty creative about putting their name on the map. And we do respect and honor the differences, but we try to understand what is it that businesses want. And as soon as we know that there's an opportunity anywhere, we'll show them as many as we can.
And that's great. I think you all are doing a good job and I appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you.
I do want to say thank you for that. And I would, to the comment that Mayor Newton mentioned earlier, it's not about poaching from each other because, you know, our boundaries are close by. And so if there's something attractive in an area, it spills over into other areas that are nearby. I would also say it's about getting net new and not just trading in the county. So on that note, I was just curious about the level of proactive engagement that is done and what we can be doing to help in that regard. I know that's something that Reddy is, you know, as Mayor Newton mentioned earlier, is doing. But what else can we, as you know, all the municipalities here, help to support that proactive engagement and bring in businesses that are not in the county now, but we want them to be?
Well, I think individually, I think the jurisdictions represented around the table are very proactive. To me, it doesn't come up very often, and we do a lot more with Rockville than some of the other jurisdictions, partly because of the real estate that it represents in terms of life sciences and other businesses that are there just very naturally. But having streamlined operations, I think I can say this. I think you want to talk about a tightly run operation. Rockville's your next door neighbors, Gaithersburg. I mean, you guys take a holistic approach. They take a holistic approach to being proactive about we are here to support business. And the more that any of you do that and reach out to us to say, here are the assets that we have and why from a business climate point of view, we have something to offer for new businesses that are coming here, then the better off we are just by inviting us to meetings, to discussions such as this. The trade-off is that we're a small organization. We have 20 people all together. And historically, we didn't focus on small and local businesses. We were charged with going after, industries, cybersecurity, hospitality, life sciences, and the list goes on. But it takes a lot of work and concerted effort to then dig down and peel the layers away to figure out what is going to make Kensington thrive even more. What is going to make, well, Tacoma Park, I haven't heard from you guys, but you guys you talk about being unique and different. There are lots of interesting things about Tacoma Park. Going back to the fact that, the myth that, I guess it's a myth in reality, that too many of our politicians live there. Well, they live there for a reason, because they like it. And that means there's a lot of activity and free thinking going on there. But to the degree that you let us know this is what is special or unique or better, including walkability in communities, which is an advantage in some communities versus others. But also always looking at your regulations and guidelines and the ability to do business when a business comes in. Is it easy? Is it simple? Do you have a good relationship with the county itself? And if not, what can we do to streamline those relationships if there are challenges?
Thank you. Now, I would also just add, talked about proactive engagement, but there's also the business retention side. And on your site, you do offer resources for businesses to help them expand and grow. So it's something I wanted to raise. I know that we partnered together on a business webinar between Ready, the city department, to just share what those resources are. And one of the things that I thought was very unique is during the pandemic, we had a lot of small businesses that weren't even online. Mm-hmm. And you all were trying to help businesses to have a sort of a plug and play to get their services online. I don't know how many of us know about those things, but I just wanted to flag that because business retention is also very important. It's hard to fill what leaves. Mm-hmm. And if there's anything else you want to share so that our leaders can share with the businesses that they engage with on how they can access resources, that would be helpful. Something very simple, and it's so simple you're going to go, well, yeah, we know that, but it really is that simple. A lot of small businesses are overwhelmed in terms of where do I go, in what order, who do I talk to? I would send every business that you ever interact with to 2 websites, the Montgomery County Government Business Portal and to MCEDC's site. We just updated our small business guide just 2 weeks ago. And it really gets into a lot of detail about if you need help with finance, if you need help with zoning, if you need help putting together a business plan, there are a ton of resources on both our website to help businesses of all sizes, all persuasions, and also at the Montgomery County Government's business portal. And if businesses would only go there and start looking through to say, I wonder if there is something for me, that's going to solve 90% of at least the initial problems in terms of knowledge. It may not provide capital, but it's going to show you where the best sources of capital are, especially capital where there are subsidies involved, because there are direct relationships and access to all of the SBA programs, all of the state of Maryland programs. And most businesses would say, where do I start? Go there. And it's all sitting there. Now, you may need help. A business may need help navigating those particular opportunities, but I would say ignorance or lack of knowledge about where to start is one of the biggest problems that a business would have. And when they start to get into trouble or aren't sure, part of it is because they don't know what the next step should be, other than I just need more customers or I need more working capital. And to me, those are 2 websites that just offer a ton of support, one-stop shopping. Thank you. I'd add one more. I will say a full disclaimer. I'm on the advisory board of the Maryland Women's Business Center, but they are funded through the Small Business Administration and also provide a lot of counseling and support for small businesses as well. And I can, in terms of full disclosure, when Mayor Newton brought that up, you saw me put up my finger, this finger, the right one, thumbs up. We personally, MCEDC provides additional financial support for
the Maryland Women's Business Center for a very specific reason. Of all the programs that are out there that support small business development in terms of training, whether it's for business plans or access to capital or marketing, one of the most impressive organizations that we've worked with as a partner is the Maryland Women's Business Center. And they don't just support women, mostly women, but it is an outstanding organization.
All right, well, I really appreciate your time. I'll just give a pause to see if anyone else has questions.
Oh, there's my friend Rob.
Good evening, Bill. Thank you for sharing all this with us tonight. I apologized, I had to join just a little bit late, so if this question has been asked, please forgive me. But with the multi-billion-dollar, I guess the perceived multi-billion-dollar surplus at the state, as well as federal monies that are going to be flowing to the state for infrastructure and other things, do you have any sense that some of the sources that counties and cities have been traditionally able to go to the state for economic development assistance, whether it's helping to seed certain types of funds, whether it's for affordable housing or for new development or in trying to invest in the life biosciences field or any of the infrastructure that would support that? Do you have any sense that any of these monies, there'll be an opportunity there for monies to flow to some of those sources that we could all access, and whether there's any kind of a timetable for that?
I think there will be, but I will say that I think it's a political football right now. Governor Hogan just announced, was it yesterday, what he would do with the $2.5 billion. And the Maryland delegation is looking at, I mean, everybody's looking at what do you do with this surplus, which is not just existing today, but I think is projected to continue for the next 4 to 6 years. So I think it's too early in the process because now they are in session trying to figure this out, and it's all over the board. But my business gut reaction says there will be money available not only to support existing programs, but to create new ones, especially including around economic development and infrastructure in particular. Unrelated to that, regardless of how you, I remember this now, regardless of how you feel about toll lanes, if we don't fix 495 and I-270, we got a big problem in this county. And that has got to be front and center. And the reason I was laughing is because I remember when Mayor Newton was, when the city of Rockville was looking at what was going to happen to houses and adjacent properties on 270 as it is expanded. So I know it's a hot button and a hot issue, but supporting that infrastructure is critically important. The Purple Line is critically important, but other infrastructure programs, and I think you will see new ones, both at the state level and of course at the federal level, will definitely trickle down to Montgomery County, and that will have lots of opportunities. I just hope that money doesn't get, I think we have to have a better sense of focus because you also know about the Kerwin Commission and how that was going to be funded to support our educational system. Lots of, you know, does part of that surplus go to really make that work in a better way? I don't know. And I don't follow the politics quite like you guys do. I just read it in the paper and I go, oh, this is interesting.
Well, thank you, Bill, and look forward to further updates from you as you have information. Thank you.
Okay.
Tracy Furman.
Thank you, Monique. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One is if the county really wants to help out, they need to beef up DPS. I mean, I find that their delays, their reviews, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, something that should happen in 6 months takes a year. I mean, it's just crazy. So I would really like to see somehow, some way that the county figure that out. The other thing is, you know, for a town our size, and Bill, as you know, we're tiny, we have made a big investment in economic development, mainly through they're bringing in a communication person to work with our small businesses because we have so many, and to provide a branding getting advertising, things like that, that small businesses can't do on their own. So unfortunately, our residents now understand why we're putting money back into our businesses, because that creates a better business community, which benefits them. So we're fortunate that we have the funding on our own to do that, and it has made a big difference. So if a small town can put some funding towards just helping small businesses in a branding, advertising assistance, I know that made a big difference for us.
Okay, let me go back to DPS for a second. That's always been one of the banes of our existence in Montgomery County historically. But I have to say that Mitra Podim, who now runs it, has come in there with a very different approach to trying to cut through the red tape. And, you know, if you're going from a year, 6 months to a year, she is really trying to streamline operations. And from what I have seen, while it is still not where it needs to be, to get rid of linear processes and to look at having parallel processes happen when you're going for permits. And I think there's a lot of improvement that is actually there now, but that you will continue to see. We have a long way to go. It shouldn't take 6 months. They're learning. What I have heard, or what I understand, is it's great to have the programs, but when you have the people on the street who actually really work to do the permits, and they have a mindset of, this is the way I do it, and if it takes me 2 weeks to do something, it'll take me 2 weeks. How do you get everybody on the same page, even within DPS? But I think you'll be pleased with the progress that they're making over the next, it may take a year longer, but I would also say it is better than it was, and that they've identified many more ways to continue to streamline processes. Also, by not surprising businesses, by when you walk in the door, them doing a better job of saying, here are all the things you're going to need to do, rather than, oh, you need a permit for this, here, you go, you do it. And then somebody says, well, now you need one for this. And businesses are going, well, why didn't you tell me up front? And so I think they have a lot of things that they're doing in terms of best practices to improve, although it is still a ways to go.
Thank you so much, Bill. Lots of wonderful information here. Just want to say thank you, because you support the lifeblood of our communities. Really, our businesses provide services to our residents and make up an important part of our local economy. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and let's stay in touch. We'd love to see more as this gets approved. And then I hope that our individual municipalities will also reach out to you on that proactive side to strengthen those partnerships.
Okay, thank you.